Right, good morning, Ruth. It's Andy Picken from Royal Wellness here, and as part of this podcast series, we cover various different subjects. We're going to look at weight management and obesity. So, first of all, hello, Ruth.
Hi, Andy. As you know, I'm Ruth Scott from the Royal Academy, but a nurse from long-standing. 40 years next year.
Wow, 40 years. So you've got some vast experience as well when we're talking about this subject. So, just a little bit about this podcast, really. We just want to talk about sort of managing weight, how it can creep on you, and particularly, I think, with shift work, in that you've got a lot of experience with being a nurse for 40 years as well. That's incredible. Just to talk about some of the challenges that we may face, particularly when we're younger and it creeps upon us, about how to manage weight effectively. So, floor's yours in a way, Ruth.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, for those who have only known me in the last sort of 18 years while I've been at Chesterfield, when I first started out in nursing, I was young. I was fit. I was the school gymnast, for example, and for years afterwards, I took health and fitness fairly seriously. So that by the time I came into my nurse training, I felt like I was quite athletic, I ran, I climbed, I canoed. I loved going up hills, anything like that, anything. And when I came into nursing, which I loved, and I loved right the way through, I absorbed myself into caring for others. And that's great. And, I've done very well with doing that. But I think if I was to talk to my younger self now, even, early on in this conversation, I'd be saying, you know what, you're important too. So while you're caring for everybody else, just remember yourself. And I thought I was caring for myself, but you're learning such a lot. You're working hard, and you're giving everything to your patients and your staff, your colleagues, and before you know it, you're whizzing down the canteen and buying in those days it was a chip butty. We had a nice sort of greasy canteen at chip butty. You had puddings with your dinners and things like that, and you'd be back again, and chocolates, and people bought you beautiful, lovely things. So things creep up. You don't have as much time to exercise. You're tired after a shift. And although I continued exercising for quite a while, the opportunities got less. So my group sports slowly demised, because when you work in shifts, it's harder to be in a group sport and give that commitment. And I've always liked a group sport. So I could still walk. I still go out on walking. But when your day's off in the week and your walkers are going out at the weekend, I had to find different people. You're tired when you're doing the 12 hours. I mean, I was lucky I didn't do 12 hours for long. I did shorter shifts, so I was there more often, but there was a bit more opportunity to go and find people after shift, and you've got a bit more energy. When 12 shifts that I did, I found I was tired. Things weren't available, and also you're so jiggered, you want to go to bed, and the last thing you want to do is drag yourself up to go. So I didn't do any of this consciously. I still felt in my head I was very fit, Ruth, and I was very active. I was running up and down the wards. I was grabbing food, and I didn't really notice that I was getting less fit for quite a while. In fact, I think the first time I really noticed that a lot of the old, fitter and healthier me had started slowly to demise was when I got pregnant. And then suddenly you have a bit of time off, a little bit of time, and it broke the cycle for me. And I thought, oh, actually, hang on a minute, I've got a bit of time just before you have a baby. I'll start doing a couple of bits. But of course, then you start with being a working mum and all that sort of stuff, and you're running back and forth. So what I would say, to be honest, Andy, is I think by the time you realise that, and not all nurses are like this, there's a lot of nurses that carry on looking after themselves, all the way through. And do you know what? They're still very caring and still do all the work, but it's just some people forget to do that for themselves, and I was definitely one of those. And one day I turned round, and again, way after my daughter, and just realised how many hours I was working, how much I was giving, and then how do I turn myself around now? Because I was so far away from where I'd been and I'd found it easier to maintain my health. I didn't even know where to start. And then that started a cycle of things. So you're on shift, you decide to join a slimming club. The group interaction's great. It doesn't matter what slimming club it is, camaraderie, but then you can't get to every third one because of commitments. And again, it's a bit harder. So there's 1,000 excuses I could give after that, Andy, for not doing something. But I do think the big message for me is, and the message I like to give other young nurses and other people working in the NHS, it's not just all about nurses, is when you're giving all you're giving and you're working as hard as you are, please carve out a little bit of time for yourself. It's too late for me to be a great role model as far as being a young nurse who does that, but I don't mind being a warning because I was fit, I was healthy, I was a good weight, and I'm still relatively fit, relatively healthy compared to some people. But I wish I knew then. I wish somebody took the time to show me when I was doing this. And I know it's hard out there, and I have got no idea how people are going to do this. I'm not the best person to advise them that, but the very least they can do is ask, is there somebody who can help me do this, or is there a way we can do this? Or even, you know, I think if I'd have asked the nurses on the ward at the time, is there a way that together we can make just a little bit of space to do something that helps our health? And there's so many more things now as well. I mean, you know, I don't know if there was stuff then. I can't remember. There certainly wasn't well-being in how we know it today. There weren't the facilities we've got today. There was camaraderie, but I think there's more out there. And I don't think when you're on shift, you know it's out there. It seems to be groups of people who know, and they try to spread the word, but somehow there's a few people in the shadows there that haven't poked their head out. And what I'd say is, poke your head out, just even if you just have a little look around or just ask. I'm happy if people, I mean, I'm very overweight and very crock, and you know, I still want to do stuff, and I do understand. So if people feel that they've got to the point where they just don't know who to talk to, because, you know, they might be very overweight, very crock, I'm more than happy to talk to people. I'm more than happy to go again and try. I keep trying. But you do need to just have a look, and I hope those people get to see this vodcast, because I'm not a vodcast person. I've only seen a few myself, but I hope that people see this, and if they don't, and you know somebody who you think needs to see this, please, I'd love them to share it around to those people, because even if the people who need to think this don't see it, there will be a friend of theirs, somebody who cares about them on the ward who thinks they do need to see it. So I would love to be able to do that. Too late for me in that way, but yeah, if I can help in any way.
Never too late, Ruth. Never too late. But
Never too late.
On quite a few things there, and I think one of the things that come apparent out of that conversation, and thanks for sharing it as well, your story, I think it's great, is the self-care element. And as you worked in healthcare for such an incredibly large amount of time anyway, you've got insight on how the priorities can shift sometimes, quite rightly so, the level of patient care, but it can distract you from looking after yourself, and that's what you've said, and also making the link between keeping yourself healthy and that actually sustaining your performance at work anyway. So they're both linked anyway. So in terms of changing your mindset, it's been a little bit selfish in terms of looking after yourself, but that translates in to your caring of patients as well. So it's making that link. Another thing I wanted to touch on as well, in terms of when you're younger and you're grabbing food on the go, and you've mentioned life and the, you know, having kids and these different factors that are constantly restricting our ability to be able to seek out those opportunities to exercise, whether it's exercising or meet other people or access a swimming pool or a dance class, whatever it is. I think that's really interesting as well. And also the amount of information out there. And that's what I wanted to say, because in terms of, we've just been talking about nutrition, haven't we? And diets before this. And where do you go with it? If you put a Google search in and put weight loss, you will come up with millions and millions of conflicting advice. And even I look at it, and I've been in this industry for a long time now, and I look at it and I think, where do you go? This confuses me, and I've got quite a good level of knowledge. Would never say we're an expert, you're always learning, but quite a good level of knowledge. I will look at that and think, where do you go with this? And actually, if this is your first step into the world of, yes, I want to become fitter and eat healthier, where do you go with it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So in terms of some of the things that you've tried, Ruth, do you mind sharing things like that? I know we mentioned about exercise classes, and particularly if you're at a stage where you're overweight already, that a lot of the exercise classes exclude a little bit because of some of the exercise you might be asked to perform that are actually quite challenging.
Yeah, I've bounced along to all sorts of exercise classes, and I would say now I'm a bit more cautious, because for instance, I got to yoga. I did yoga when I was younger, and I've forgotten that I've changed. So I got there and my balance is rubbish in comparison to what it was. Going to the floor and getting back up again. I'm a hefty weight, and getting back up again is quite hard in a group of people. So I don't mind mixing with a group of what are quite fit people or very slim people. But when I feel I'm dragging people down and also dragging myself down, because I can't, not necessarily keep up, but I can't do the basic functions. So, a lot of places they'll say, go at your own pace, do this. But if everybody's on the floor and you're not, that's a different situation. So I think there's something around, I don't want to do armchair exercises. I mean, that's what I've been offered before, Andy. And it just makes me think, oh, I don't want to do armchair exercises. I'm not that old. I'm not that unfit. But I do need something where I can do something that's tapered to, if you've got a bit of a cropped knee, or if those sort of things. So I think one of the things is around positioning. So you almost need to know, do I need to get to the floor or do I not? The other thing is equipment. So I know there's some very big people go to gyms, but I'm short and round. So, it's a different sort of size to somebody who's tall and really big. So when I go into gyms or exercise classes, often there's an issue with me getting on and off equipment, and not with the management of getting on and off, but the gap's not big enough to get through, or to get through, my biggest bit is in a different place to somebody who's taller. So the gap might be there, but it's a foot higher than I am. So there's little things like that. And then there's the weight on some things. So, body balance class, when you sit on a ball, you've got to be careful which balls you pick, because if they're not quite as inflated as another ball, it's, and I could write a comedy on this, but equally, it's another thing that you need to get over before you walk in the room. You have to really have a stiff talk to yourself, or talk to somebody before and say, for example, I wanted to start spinning classes. And knowing all this, because now I've researched all this myself by getting stuck on stuff, I rang the guy up and said, can I come and sit on one of your spin bikes before the class? Because I need to know I can get on, I can get off, and I can reach the pedals without being all, Absolutely, he said, no problem. Why have I not thought about that before, in brackets, by the way, because it would have made my life 10 years earlier easier, but you're perhaps not ready. So I get in there, he shows me how to do it, I can get on and off, and I started a spin class, and actually I really enjoyed it. But then the bikes are too close together when there's so many people in a room, and I don't mean COVID. So I've ended up having to get me one at home. But what it meant was just that time to say, what do I need? I need to talk to the guy who does it. And that guy to say, yeah, come and try it. They're the things that you can do that's really, really helpful. So there's something about where you have to be on the floor getting up. There's something about getting on and off equipment, but there's something about weight on equipment. And then there's the thing about when you access any sort of fitness thing. Now, there's a few fitness apps that do have slightly bigger or slightly older people on them, but they are rare. And don't get me wrong, I'm quite happy looking at a fitter person when I'm looking at an app, but it doesn't make me think I belong there. So, a fitter, bigger, older person who's short and a bit round would I would be able to think, oh, actually, she might be a model, but I still feel I've got a connection with that person. So I think there's something about, are you with your own? But equally, I don't want to be there with a load of people who are my size and my weight, because I want something to aspire to. Yeah. But so it's a bit of balance, isn't it? I probably could go on, but ask me something else. But I think there's a lot of stuff. And then, slimming classes. So if we're talking about eating, I am confused. I mean, I was taught basic nutrition in my training. And over the years, I've read more about food and what dietary requirements are than probably anything else. And I am so confused. I don't know whether bread's an enemy or a friend. I don't know whether eggs are bad for me or not. I don't know how my cholesterol reacts to this, that, and the other. And I've been told all sorts of things. I don't go on the internet because it just confuses me more. And I'm always hopeful that somebody will come out with something fairly simple for me eventually. I've not seen it yet, but it's there. I eat all food. I'm not fussy eater at all. I love healthy stuff, and I love, highly calorific, highly cholesterol laden stuff. But choices wise, I find it hard to make choices. And when I'm busy, and this is what's happened in the past, I go for my old faithfuls, which are often less healthy choices than I would make, because I just don't know how to make, or I didn't, and a bit more so now, but in those days, I really didn't know how to make quick food healthy.
And there's a time element in that, like you said, you've come off shift or whatever, an instant hit of a chocolate bar or a bag of crisps. In my case, I'm more savoury, but crisps is definitely a downfall for me. Yeah. I would reach for something like that rather than think I'm going to get home and prep a meal, for example. And we did talk as well, Ruth, about, and it was interesting what you said about sustaining it. So you've done a lot of different activities in the past. You're very sort of au fait with cooking and recipes and things like that. But the key is, how do you sustain it? Yeah. And I think that's where camaraderie comes in some ways, because, and that's the bit that, often you fall off the wagon with. You've got friends that are helpful, or you've got a group you're going to that's supportive, but I think that's really key for me, having a buddy. But my buddies get to normal weight very quickly normally, because I've got a lot of very slim, healthy friends who are people I aspire to be like, but they lose a couple of stone, and that's fantastic. The longest journey I think they've been on is a couple of stone maximum, and it's great. It's really hard to lose a stone. They might 2 stone, but then I just feel, oh gosh, here I go for another 3 years. I could almost need a buddy that's on a similar length journey, and those sort of things. But so if there's any buddies out there, if anybody watching the podcast when we put it on, then drop me an email, and we can link you up. Link me up. I want a big buddy. what you've touched on there as well is that connectivity into it, and I think certainly since COVID, that's become apparent that these online classes, some people have took on the online classes, but for a lot of people, the classes have fallen off in terms of attendance, the yoga, the Pilates. As soon as we brought them back on site, where people get to see each other and at social distance and say hello, and they're doing it together at a similar level, that's when it helps to sustain that motivation. So I mean, that's definitely key. And we have got a few plans, haven't we, Ruth? We're looking at a big conversation around this subject to sort of collate feedback and ask people to get involved. If you want to explain maybe a little bit more of that concept. So for those of you who've not been involved in one of these conversations, it's really everybody's opportunity to have a say. I'm very aware I'm one big person. I'm one big woman of a certain age. There's thousands of different people out there that want to get involved
who I won't represent. I mean, you know, they might be big, they might even be women, but I won't represent the same sort of views, experiences and wants and needs. So we need a variety. We need men, we need anybody who feels they've got a big journey ahead of them. And Andy, you're going to be there, aren't you? And I think Luke's going to be there, who also has been very supportive and understands more about the big issue. He's not big himself, but he gets it because I know he's worked with people. So I think it's just come along and have your say. The conversation will be very broad. You don't have to say anything out loud if you don't want to. You could write something down and pass it to somebody at the end. But it's, you know, what do you need? And let's see if we can't help provide that. I'd love to pay back. I've reduced my hours. So I've got a bit more time than I did. So I want to focus on my journey, but I'd love to make it bigger than that. I'd love to give back to, you know, everybody who's taking things forward now as I'm off the other end of my work time, and hopefully make myself better, but also support other people. So come along, have a say. What do you need? What do you want? I mean, particularly I'm interested in the 12-hour shifters, because how you manage to get to things, you know, we need ideas. You know, do you need a video putting up in the gym of an exercise class that's been pre-recorded and you and a mate go just literally before you go home? Is that too much? I'm sure it is. I don't know. So we need you there, so we can, instead of us making it up for you, you can tell us what you need. And even if you haven't got the solution, come along and we'll build. And hopefully somebody in that room will be able to build on an idea or a challenge or whatever, and come up with a decent portfolio. I think the reason I'm particularly keen in this, the reason I'm here, is because the well-being agenda is not just for fit, healthy people. The wellbeing team know that, but I think it's not necessarily something that we're taking on board. If you feel you're not quite well and fit and active, you know, are you pre all this? Are you actually 5 steps? I mean, I laughed with Andy a few weeks ago when I was saying I feel like I'm not Couch to 5K, because I looked at the Couch to 5K app, and the couch bit was further. The first day was an aspiration for me, not a beginning. So sort of I'm pre 5 steps, 5 to 5K. And if you feel like that as well, you're less likely to access things. So just come to a big conversation. You're not committed to anything. It's just to have a say. We'll have to try and get a way of people inputting who can't be there on that day. I don't know how we deal with that, Andy. Maybe we have a chat or something on some sort of chat line, or we somehow canvass opinions. But please make sure you're heard, and again, spread the word to other people, because this is a good chance for us to do something to really help people, and particularly to stop people getting into a state and look after people who are looking after everybody.
And I think there's, you know, what you mentioned as well was, you know, well-being wasn't really a thing, you know, back in the past. And it wasn't really, was it? And now it's become this priority, you know, and it has been for a couple of years. I've certainly seen it moving up the agenda, and since COVID, absolutely, you know, gone right to the top in terms of how we look after and care for our staff. And I think now, you know, with such things as this podcast and the big conversation, you know, people's feedback, should they come into this, gives a real opportunity with resource as well for us to tailor-make something that works for people. And let's be honest, different things work for different people, different personalities, background, cultures, everything else. But at the moment, we've got an opportunity to build something quite unique. And I know the hospital charity is very, very supportive of the health and wellbeing agenda in terms of new ideas and how we can shape something going forward. So fantastic, and thanks for your time, Ruth. And I think what we'll do is we'll put out the dates of the big conversation when we've had our planning meeting, and share that around the trust so people can get involved. And also, if people are interested in what's available already, then go on the internet. I'll put my email and mobile number on this podcast as well, so people can give me a call and we can link us all up together, certainly around this subject, should you want to be involved. And hopefully we can create something quite exciting, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I'm very excited at the minute. I hope other people, you know, we only need a couple of 3 people, and then we'll grow a crowd. But yeah, it's a great opportunity, and like you say, there has been the resources supporting it, and it is very focused at the moment. So this is the time. If we don't grasp it now, I don't know if there'll be a better time. So yeah, let's move it forward. Fantastic.
Let's do it. Okay then, Ruth. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah. Thanks, Andy.